Welcome to Jacket Jockeys with Justin.
And me, the woman in the kimono,
Is that the new
aka
bit? It's
Ankui.
gonna what?
That's right. That's right. I didn't want to tell you
What a
before, but I think
crackpot
that's no,
theory.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
I'm
I
on
do. I
Cooey.
do have a crackpot theory, which is that Julie is the woman in the kimono.
You didn't
How
think to ask on Hooey.
I love it. Can't wait for that line. Did you all know that Justin is a writer on the show? It kind of reframes this podcast a little.
My guesses are surprisingly bad.
Well, yeah, you
Um,
only write one-liners and you send them in and I'm not sure any of the one-liners have actually been picked up yet
I don't
on
think
the
they have
show.
actually, but
But
I
you
still
do
consider
keep,
myself a writer on the show.
yes, a writer for the show. Not yet on the show, but certainly for the show.
Sick burn. Sick burn.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, y'all.
Hey,
So,
Justin, do you remember the 1990s?
no, but I bet Victor does. He's old
Oh my
enough.
God. I set you
Sorry.
right up for that.
I'm sorry.
Here's a history lesson. In the 1990s, it was common for TV shows to have like holiday themed episodes.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel as if this episode was the Halloween episode of From.
Really?
Yes, because even on a show as creepy as From, it had some Halloweeny things about it. Like the Polaroid thing, I think was quite Halloweeny,
Okay. Sure.
but
Sure.
really especially what's his name? The dummy.
Jasper.
Jasper.
Yeah.
I feel like that going through the cave and getting Jasper, that's all very Halloweeny to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear it. I was just gonna say that, like, it's another episode where nothing supernatural happened. I'm like, well, okay, if you count that scene, that's.
I think on Cooey Kids is supernatural.
I do too, and I also forgot about that. So
Oh,
I forgot about the Elgin scene with the kimono lady. I forgot about Onkoi kids, and I
the
forgot about the fact they literally saw monsters in
the
the
monsters in the
caves.
tunnels. Yeah, that
So
line, if you keep coming here, we're gonna make you stay.
yeah, that was wild.
That's wild.
I got a
That's wild.
I got a question about that, but
That's wild. And if you believe Victor as I do, that that room has moved. A- And he was measuring the trees last season because he thought the trees were moving.
yeah, yeah,
And now
yeah,
possibly the caves are
yeah,
moving.
yeah.
I don't know.
Is it related?
Things are moving.
Things are moving.
The plot, not so
Ah,
much.
sick burn, sick burn.
Ew.
Yeah, no, it was definitely in the vein. I guess that's why like it sort of felt like the same kind of episode as last week, like sort of gradually ticking along these things and not introducing too much new until the end.
Yeah.
there there is definitely a revelation at the end of the episode
Yeah.
that is certainly new. And obviously Fatima's story reaches a turning point as well.
Yeah.
Something I feel like we should have guessed. Like, did you
Um,
ever guess that? I feel like I never guessed
that
it.
she's only pregnant at night.
Like that she's like,
That she's only pregnant at night.
because it's a monster baby.
Because it's a
Your monster
monster
baby's in the caverns
baby.
at night, or sorry, the tunnels. It's in the tunnels at night, and then it go back in when it's the
So
daytime,
I'm trying to remember why.
or the opposite. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Like what? Right. Her fetus is in the tunnel.
Yeah,
Like why we thought
maybe it
that
was in that stroller that they saw, that old school stroller.
there's an old school stroller.
In that room they go into. Yeah, I didn't notice it the first time. The second time, it's like one of
Mm.
those little ones, like a carriage, you
Oh, you
know.
mean a pram?
Oh, is that what it's called?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, see, I'm
A
not.
pram is maybe just the British word for the other word that you gave.
Yeah, yeah.
Stroller.
It's like a stroller where the baby would face you instead of away. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like they would
Yeah.
lie like
Yeah, but it's like old fashioned.
it's old
Yeah.
fashioned. Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like it's from like the 50s or something.
There are
Like a lot of
contemporary
this stuff.
versions of yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, this isn't our other very popular podcast about purchases for parents
Baby
of
accessories,
newborns,
the
baby
podcast.
baby accessories, the podcast. Um Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'll raise this question when we get to that scene. But yeah. What'd you think of this episode?
So I'll just say, before we like dive in, this is season 3, episode 6. We're doing our off season from cast here. This is from MGM Plus's noted mystery drama horror series, and the episode is called Scar Tissue.
Scott tissue that I wish you found. Yeah, what's his name has a really sick scar.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if
Randall.
I don't have any massive scars on my face, but if I had to have one, I think Randall's is pretty badass. Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
badass.
I'm wondering if it's gonna heal like Vans did.
Oh god.
You
Yeah,
know?
it's a lifetime of you should see the other guy.
Or if it's gonna be like, like kind of like Lock Scar, where like they still did it, but it got pretty subtle as the series went on, after like the first season. Like it was very,
Stories do improve, but
yeah,
and then they plateau and then yeah.
yeah. It was just kind of just a little.
And then you're just that weirdo who's like, "No, I promise. I got this like scar," and then it's just gone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And no one believes you.
And no
But
one
yeah,
believes
no,
you.
interesting developments. I mean, it's definitely like a mid-season type episode.
I liked the pace of it though. You mentioned the
Um,
pace in terms of plot because I think if you sort of take your time, you can do some character stuff
yep,
and feel
yep.
less pressured to just like keep pulling out like
Shit, yeah.
yeah, keep jumping the shark.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's like, so the only reason that it concerns me a bit is that I did feel like I felt like season 2 had kind of a similar pace where there's like a bunch of stuff at the beginning, and then it kind of settles in, and and then like at the end, it really felt like they rushed through a lot of stuff, at least to
I see.
me.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, hey Sarah, you come over here and do the
Yeah.
thing. Blah, blah, blah,
Right,
blah,
right,
blah, blah.
right. So
And I
you
feel like we're heading for that,
uh-huh.
because we only have 4 episodes left, and I'm like, damn, they got a lot of shit to get to, and we just gotta get into like, hey you get over here, do this thing. Hey you get over here. you know
Yeah, and it'll be set in the 1930s, which would be really weird. Um, yeah, I hear what you're saying. There is a lot to cover. You said there's 4 more episodes.
4 more episodes. Yeah, yeah.
And then I'm gonna be really disappointed because then what do I have in my life after this show is over? You know what's weird? No one, I don't talk to anybody else who's watching this show. I don't know what that says
Yeah,
about my
I mean, I
friend
do
group.
think it's a bit of a cult show in general. In the streaming age, shows have become more niche.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it has expanded its popularity since it started. When like I think no one knew it was on, and I say no one. Obviously, some people knew it was on, but quite a fewer people. I mean, I didn't find out about it until season 2 was already out. So like and like why wouldn't I? I mean, I'm like the core.
TV luminary.
I'm the target audience for
Yeah.
this show, so
Yeah.
it's just weird
Yeah.
that it took so long for me to find out. And I found out about it from Claude, even not from any
How
like
did he find out about it?
advertising.
The algo?
That's a good question.
I
I
feel
don't
like the
know.
algorithm should have been really forced in this.
I don't have to ask. I'm not really sure how he found out about it, but anyway, I think I don't that's the thing. I don't have a problem with the pacing of the episode itself. I'm just concerned about the
Yeah,
pacing of the
what it might mean
season.
for later. Yeah.
And I don't like rushing through important things, which I feel like happens sometimes. It definitely happened in season 2, where it was just like, oh my God, like they were just like, and then
Yeah.
for example, like in that period of season 2 is when I think it might even be the last episode, is when Victor takes Tabitha to the bottle tree that's the faraway tree, and he makes that claim, this tree's not like the other faraway trees, it only goes to one place, and it takes her to the lighthouse, and you know what I mean. And then we get like this season where it's like, nah, that was bullshit, and of course no one's even talking about it. Even Tabitha
yeah.
hasn't mentioned
Yeah.
like Yeah, Victor told me this tree was different. It's almost like they
So,
want to forget about that
yeah, okay, so maybe they wanna forget about it,
because
and
they
they
didn't want to
just
make it too easy to get back to
right,
the lighthouse. I feel like that's the
right.
main reason they did that, but it's like, but you shouldn't have had Victor say that.
Right. So either we really shouldn't read anything into it because they just wish that they didn't have that line, or this is an invitation for us to wonder who determines where the faraway trees send you. And it seems like the boy in white is the guess, but then why did he send I mean, no one needs to wonder why anybody would send Dale into the side of an empty swimming pool to his death. But why did he send Michael to a chimney underground?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a good lingering question. So on that general
Boy, and
topic,
by Michael, I mean Boyd.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we all know what you meant. Everyone says that. It's hard. It's hard to get away from it. But yes.
It
Uh
really feels like it could be Michael, you
I
know?
mean, it definitely feels like it's playing with. It's like he's typecast, or at the very least they typecast
Yeah,
him.
but he's like Jack in this show.
Yeah. Well, it's like, what if Michael
But
was
he could,
Jack?
yeah. What if
You know,
Michael could have been Jack.
Michael could have been Jack. Absolutely.
If he
Yeah.
but except that he didn't have the, like, deep dysfunctional, like, surgeon complex.
True. True.
Like, "I don't have a god complex. I am
Jack
God."
never said that for the record.
He felt
That's
it.
Alec Baldwin.
He felt it.
But I do sort of agree that was like a fundamental. Yeah, I mean Boyd's hangups are like a little different, but they are related to like
Yeah.
taking care of people and maintaining order and like trying to like,
Mhm.
like manage, like
God, can you imagine how insufferable Jack Shepherd would have been in a combat zone?
I know, right? Like he should be in the infirmary, but he would be off. Like, it's like,
Telling everybody what to do.
yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. But yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think some friendly fire would befall him.
And I guess another difference is that, he did grow up with Ellis, or Ellis grew up with him, I should say.
Mhm.
It wasn't like the Walt thing exactly. Like their rift was more based on what happened there.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Your rift is just over.
the
Like,
rift is totally
it's
over. I
so
agree. I
over.
agree. But it's still, I mean, that's what made him
But
feel
he's
like
old
Michael.
enough to also like be freed of that. Like we've talked
Yeah.
before about what having a child will do to a character, usually a female character, but not always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plummet.
Well, I think they seem to be avoiding that problem.
Well,
As far
yeah,
as I can tell.
yeah.
It seems like this
It's
episode planted a
weird.
flag and said, like, you know what?
Or does she have is she pregnant in an alternate dimension? Like Jade's whole thing. I'm not a string theorist, but
Really?
yeah, I know. I know that I've told you that in the past. When I said that, I was exaggerating significantly.
Yeah, Jake's funny in this episode. Like I mean, I guess he's funny in a lot of episodes, but like, yeah, he was really giving off big. What do they call it? What do the kids say? Big Faraday energy
He
in this
was
episode.
you would say he's giving Faraday.
Yeah, there you go. There
Yeah.
you go.
I'm trying to be hip
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah,
the young
yeah.
people. I'm 67 years old, but I try to stay youthful.
And we all know, if we watch Lost, we all know what happened to Faraday and his big theory, right? I mean, that shit was all wrong. So anyway, my point is I'm not convinced. I think Jade's like onto something with the puzzle and the bottles and the numbers. I'm not saying there's nothing there, but
Well, I'll tell you, Maine is famous for its lighthouses.
and that's fair, and that's a fair point. But I'm just not convinced by the wormhole or dimension shit. Like I
Well,
feel like that's the show like doing this thing that Lost would do something. Or you just have a character like throw some shit out there to give like stuff for the audience to think about, but it doesn't necessarily have
uh-huh.
to mean anything because the
Well,
character is just spitballing it. Like he doesn't really know. He's just like making
well,
some
it's
good
funny
guesses.
because then Tom, representing perhaps just another side of Jade's psyche, is like, none of this means anything, which is
Mhm.
also very Lost-esque to have a
Yeah,
character tell us that all this stuff that we're
yeah.
theorizing about
You're like
is meaningless.
imposing some big pattern on this thing, and
Yeah.
really it's just like somebody want to put these things and it doesn't, there's no significance. This isn't nature, blah,
These two
blah,
trees are funny though, and not funny, haha. And in Camden, Maine, there are two trees.
yeah,
We never made it, obviously, to that other tree, the original tree,
indeed.
much as I would have wanted to. Do you think we will someday? Do you think we'll end up back out and get a chance to go to that tree?
I feel like if they don't, I feel like we will. I don't. I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
And where's the boy in white?
Well, okay. Yeah, yeah. That's what I keep meaning to say, but I keep failing to actually get it out
Okay,
there.
now.
Well, I want to say because anyone who's a faithful Jacket Junkies listener, I don't know how many of you are.
Do you think
It's
anyone's listening?
it's well, not as many as listen to Jack Jocks, but anyway, some are. Um, but um, but if you did listen to Jack Jockeys, and if you didn't, and you haven't seen Showtime's Yellow Jackets, I recommend it, and also the podcast, for season 2 at least. Season 1 review coming. Look out, kids.
Ooh,
Anyway,
that'll be fun.
yeah, I want to do that. It was a request actually, from Patreon, and I wanted to do it. It's just this from thing is like
Yeah,
current, so I
yeah.
want to I want to
No,
do
that
that
sounds
first.
fun. I'd like to do
But
that.
yeah, I thought we'd do it before the series, because we
Mhm.
never really talked about season 1 like directly. So anyway, all that said, throughout season 2, up until the point where it was both things were addressed, like I was doing this countdown of like, are they going to talk about the postcards? You know,
Right.
are they going to talk about what was the other thing?
This is a real run-on
There was a
sentence.
second thing. Anyway, now I don't even remember what the second thing was, but it was one of those like lingering mysteries from season 1.
Season 1 of
Um
Yellow
of
Jackets.
Yellow Jackets. Yeah. And so anyway, I am now that we have gone multiple episodes with a whole lot of talk about Tabitha getting out and what it meant and so on, and even direct reference to being pushed out of the lighthouse, but phrased in such a way to delicately avoid mentioning the boy in white. The boy in white has not been mentioned, I think. Sit like so we saw the boy in white in one of those paintings that Miranda made, right? I think that was episode 2. I think that might have been the last time that there was sort of a reference. In the first episode, obviously we see him in Camden and Tabitha follows him, and she's like, "What did you mean this is the only way?" I mean, I still want clarification on that, and I still find it utterly
Yeah.
bizarre that no one has even brought up this boy in white who is 100% integral to Tabitha's getting out. Like,
Yeah.
it's like they're treating it almost like that didn't happen or didn't matter.
Yeah.
Like it was just like she just went to the lighthouse and like I don't know, it's like she got pushed out by like whatever, it was passive. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's just weird.
So that's not what I thought the end of your sentence was going to be for some reason. Even though I'm not surprised that you feel that way. I thought you were going to say with all this talk about what Tabitha did and didn't do when she got out, that somebody else was going to get out, probably like Boyd. I don't know who else would.
Yes, yes, yes. I do think if someone else gets out, it will be someone else. Uh
Not her again, you mean?
Not Tabitha again.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think she's still got stuff to do, clearly by the reveal in this
Yeah.
episode.
Okay.
But like, I do think the getting out. I feel like that was a warm up, and I think we'll get some,
Yeah.
maybe Boyd, but maybe someone else. I don't know.
Maybe
It
Jade?
seems weird to me to have Boyd get out, but yeah, maybe
Yeah.
Jade. Yeah, I feel like it would actually be some other character. I could even see Kenny, or I don't know, like some character who, like, it's like not totally obvious what's tying them to that
Okay, so
place.
speaking of characters, I had this wild thought, this crackpot theory in the ultrasound scene. What if Christy is the mole? I don't really think there has to be a mole, but my thought when she was like, "Yeah, you're not pregnant," was like, "Wait a minute." You know?
Well, so I have a specific thought about that.
Ooh,
Um,
should we
do you want to
wait?
talk about it now, or you want to wait till we get to that scene? That is like later in the episode, but I can bring it up now if you want.
You decide. I can't decide.
All right, I'm inclined to wait
Okay.
just because that's
Okay.
that's the
I'm
time.
really, yeah, I'm excited for that. All right, let's get there.
All right,
Let's
so
go.
we'll get there. We'll get there. It's gonna
All right,
take a little while, but we'll get there. Okay. So we're gonna dive in,
let's do
huh?
it. Yeah. Scene opens on.
Tabitha looks out the window. Jim asks what she's doing. Tabitha thinks
Oh my God, Jim is the worst. Sorry.
this is Jim's one scene in this episode,
And it really speaks to
and
him.
it's a real corker.
It's a real
It
corker.
definitely it definitely bolstered your point from last week because
Thank you.
I felt like last week I sort of understood where he was coming from, but this week I was like, okay, like now I feel like you're just pushing it and you're
Yep.
just being like obstinate for
Yep.
no good reason.
Yep.
I don't know.
Straight men are always going to disappoint you. And Jim is Jim is driving that point home. You know what? Don't tell me to go back to bed, you motherfucker.
It wasn't great. It wasn't great. I was not impressed. And I really wanted Tabitha to be like, yeah, and as soon as I left, Ethan ran out of the house. But I don't know if she even knew that
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. She really doesn't like emotionally damage him as much as she could in this.
I know, right?
It's a shame. It's a
Do
waste of an
better.
opportunity, but there will be many more opportunities.
Yeah, it's funny, and then he just fucks off for the rest of the episode. Anyway, sorry, I didn't finish the
That's
scene.
basically how he parents as well.
Sick burn. Okay, so yeah, Tabitha thinks she should have done more when she was in the real world. Jim tries to reassure her that she did her best, but Tabitha isn't buying it. Then they have a fight about Tabitha's leaving, where Jim makes some vague asinine points about doing it together. Sorry, that's just how I
I love
wrote
that
it.
those are your notes.
That's literally how it came off. So that's how
Uh-huh.
I wrote it. Like he's like, we could have gone together. And I'm like, that's fucking stupid, Jim.
Yeah, let's go together because it was bad for you to abandon your children, so we should have gone together.
I know.
Wow.
It's like it's such a like what are you talking
Oh,
about? Like
Jim.
yeah, so anyway, that's why I was just like, yeah, you're losing me, Jim. I don't really this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, we should have gone to get what? Like what you mean and then bring Julie and Ethan too? Like that's just what are you talking about anyway? So
Yeah, he sucks
about
ass.
doing it together. Eventually, Thomas comes up, and the whole idea they're going to get a divorce, and like, oh, you just wanted to like do it on your own or whatever. You know, it's like that kind of
Yeah,
point
yeah.
that he's trying to say.
Well, I would if I was also stuck in a legal commitment with you, I would also want to get out of it so that I could like process my emotions without your horse shit all the time. Like, look, you got pretty hair, but that about it.
Ah, all right, I hope there's some late '90s fans in here who appreciate that quote. Fuck it, I might husband you. Anyway, all right, so things escalate and are diffused when a monster screeches. And then
And
Jim
actually speaking, I speak monster, and the monster said, "Oh, will you just shut the fuck up, Jim?"
enough, Jim, enough. So Jim leaves, and yes, this is the end of Jim for this episode.
Bye.
So okay, bye. So he's supposedly off at the cabin getting food from there. I mean that's the claim
Yeah.
which is
I'm
later
putting it in
made.
quotes.
Yeah. It's fair. So yeah, this is I don't know, it's weird because like I felt like they sort of already went through this. I mean, this is another reason
Yeah.
why I'm like, okay, Jim, like what are you making any new point here? You're actually saying
No.
something even stupider than what you said
Yeah.
before. So it's just like
I mean,
why?
I think that's what oh God, what was the boy's name? Ethan.
Ethan?
I think that's pretty much what Ethan says later in the episode. Ethan just like dropping
Yeah, yeah,
dropping truth bombs
yeah,
left and right now.
yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah, it
It's
was
true.
great back when you weren't fighting because we were all just struggling to survive.
Like,
And now
yeah, yeah.
you're back to
Constant
being
terror. This sucks.
petty children.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, definitely. But yeah, yeah. This is, I guess, they're in that weird stage. I guess it's the thing where, like Sun and Jin, they're obviously in conflict when they're on the flight, and then they crash on the island, and like that gives them the opportunity to reconcile. But then they get separated, and then they come back together, and then it gets separated
Oh my
again.
God, yeah. It's that distance makes the heart grow fonder
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah,
Everybody should just like, spend some time away
yeah.
from your person.
Yeah. And but like in that like because of the length of Lost, like the first separation was even longer than this one was.
Yeah.
But it was, but the second separation was like a full season and a half basically.
Well, one thing, okay,
Um
all right. I'm not sure what your point is exactly because I tuned out a little bit.
oh,
But
okay.
what I will say is that Jin actually acts in a redemptive way at a certain point. And
Yeah,
it isn't
yeah.
clear to me yet whether Jim is gonna try to be redemptive,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
try to
yeah.
turn over another leaf.
Yeah.
I we don't see flashbacks on this show.
Yeah.
As you know, Lost invented the
They
flashback
did, yeah. They certainly did. God.
and relied on it heavily. Um,
Very.
so we don't really see what their relationship was like. We just hear about it, you
Yeah.
know.
Through dialogue,
Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe he wasn't as big of a turd as he's been since Arrival, but
Yeah. Yeah. No, my main point was just that I feel like they're in this bind where they've gotten them back together, but like if they
yeah.
just fully reconcile.
Right, there's no drama.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're sort
Got
of
it.
making them, like have
Yeah,
the
I
conflict.
agree. I
I don't
agree.
know.
I guess I should blame the writers, not the character.
Blame the writers. That's yeah. But yeah, I think there's room for a Jim. I don't think Jim's irredeemable. I just think like he makes a
No,
lot
and
of
he's not even that bad. He's just
yeah,
annoying.
exactly. Exactly. It's just he makes a lot of impulsive decisions and statements, and like yeah, he's a bit
He's just very
reactive and
confident in that way that
yeah.
men like that are.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I'm bringing my animosity toward all those men that I met at clubs.
With nice hair, but that about it.
That about it.
All right. So we move into the credits, and then we have Tabitha sitting in the kitchen looking at some drawings. I guess these are Victor's drawings. I'm not 100% sure, but it might not matter. Anyway, Julie comes in and asks about Dad, meaning Jim. He's at the lake getting food with some others, some other insignificant red shirts, presumably.
What if she tied him up in the basement?
No, he's still at the lake.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't
he went to
worry.
the lake.
Why does it say the lake on the basement door, Mom? She's really committed to the bit. Anyway,
It's the only way to be.
Julie thinks it might have to do with the fight they had and leaves Skitty at the end. So this is mostly just a
Yeah,
transitional
yeah,
scene
yeah.
here. Um, Okay. So then we cut to Jade telling Boyd about Tabitha ending up in Camden. He's got this whole like murder board type thing going. And he starts speculating about like quantum events or wormholes or dimensional rifts. This is the
Yeah.
Faraday thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
Boyd's not really impressed. Jade mentions that Miranda was, quote, the only one to have a connection to this place before she arrived. When I watched this again, I was like, "Oh, you're
Foreshadowing.
foreshadowing here." I didn't
Yeah.
catch it the
I didn't
first time
either. Yeah.
because the first time I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. That's
Uh-huh.
true. That's an interesting point, and it should be investigated, or at least you should think about it." Um, mentioning the bottle tree, Boyd mentions that there's another bottle tree, the one he found with Sarah. It was not a faraway tree. And he also mentions the 1864 number that was inside one of the bottles. And Jade wants to see the second tree. And we're definitely gonna pick that up later.
Yeah. I love that line. I thought you said you had something interesting to show me. I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think about this when we watched it, but I'm thinking about it now. Yes, Miranda. Okay. So Miranda's visions and paintings, and then at the end of this episode, we find out about Tabitha's nightmares, childhood nightmares being set in this other area. And also, there are these other ways in which, and we've talked about this before, people's prior fears have shown up on the island.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit,
Right, right, right.
it opens
The
up some new.
causality is not clear.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of like I mean that scene later on where Tabitha's like, when I was a child, I had this nightmare all the time, made me think immediately of the thing that Sarah said about her brother's fear of cicadas
Yeah,
and
yeah.
about the bus driver.
The nursery rhyme thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, it's valid. It's valid for sure.
but this is really interesting. This is a really interesting scene. He's got these two um yeah.
I
And
feel like I should have paid a more attention because there was another thing like this. Uh oh man, what was the other thing? Um uh oh right. I think it was like the difference between the lighthouse and the underground place chamber
the
or whatever
tower.
where Martin was.
Well, I don't think
Um
Martin was supposed to be underground. Was Martin supposed to be underground?
well, okay, I don't know for sure. It's just last week when
Yeah, yeah,
Boyd
yeah. He
described
says a
it
chimney underground.
as an underground chimney, it made me think. But it might just be that the chimney only was underground and the rest of it. I'm not saying. I'm just saying like whatever that place was,
Yeah.
was not the same as the lighthouse. Like that. If you watch carefully, you can tell that that's the case. But yeah, I feel like with this. And the motel too, like the fact the motel isn't there, like that was something that stood out to me watching through season one. That it's like there's clearly like there's a sign, there's a pool, but there's no motel, and that's weird. But I did not. I really thought they were the same bottle tree. I didn't think about one of them's a
Right.
faraway tree and one of them's not, so they can't be the same tree.
Right. So when we saw Boyd and Sarah come upon the bottle tree, I thought it looked different, but I thought it was just in my head. So
Yeah,
I was pleased to be like retroactively but yeah,
I
I
thought
don't.
it was just a production thing. Like it looks
Yeah,
different
yeah.
because they filmed it at a different
So
time
so
and
like I said
different angles.
earlier, so here we have this interesting. So okay, so Jade's thing is, oh, maybe it's a wormhole or it's like displaced in some way. We've got, does Cam is this place linked to Camden, Maine in some
Mhm.
fundamental way? In Camden, Maine, there are these two bottle trees.
Yep, and there's
There are
two
lighthouses in
in the front world
Maine.
as well. Yeah,
Um,
yep.
yeah.
Yeah, could it be some bizarre mirror Camden or some kind of it's got some weird specific
And
link
I
with
want to
Camden.
know what are the consequences of taking the bottles down out of these trees? Because when they first came upon the bottle tree and he took some down, I was like, "Oh shit, don't do
Yeah, yeah,
that."
yeah.
But we've yet to see.
any consequence.
that we know
Yeah, that we
of.
know of. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll also bring up they gave a name to them. I think Jay calls them wards, which I thought was weird. I was like,
Yeah.
wards? I never would have come up with that term.
Yeah, like a protective thing.
Yeah, yeah, of course. No, it makes sense. It's just that's not a word I would have ever applied to those things. But anyway, he takes the rod out, to help get Christy out of the bear trap, and everyone was
I
saying
know, me too.
this podcast, every podcast I listened to, like, oh man, he messed up that
They shot
word.
it that way. They filmed it. They wanted you to think
They did, but then like
they may
nothing,
never have had any
nothing
plan to pay it off, but
happens.
like, yeah, they film it to be
Yeah,
tense.
they do. They do. They do. And you did see stuff there. And obviously, I mean, I think there's more to this because it seems significant to me that he saw that stuff. He's had visions there. That's the place that Tabitha was having nightmares about, right? As a child.
Yeah.
And also, he saw the Ankui kids. It's like I mean, not it doesn't perfectly work because like he's seen stuff she hasn't seen, but it does seem like they have some weird, they're like sharing some visions. I don't quite know why, but it does seem like there's something there,
Yeah.
that it seems significant to me that he had like a specific, no one else saw that stuff there, and same thing with the kids, like no one else has seen the kids. I mean, Miranda did, but in the present time,
Yeah.
you know. So like I don't know, like I don't know what to make of that, but it seems significant to me. And there's also another thing about Jade that he says later that to me was like a game changer in terms of how I understood what was going on. And I'm gonna save it, but I just want to tease it now.
What? Yeah, no, you have to say
Do I
it.
have to say it?
Yes, you just like you walked us right up to it.
All right, all right. So later on, so when we get to it later, I'm just gonna brush by it.
Fine.
But later on, Jay basically says that the reason that Tabitha made, I'm sorry, the reason that Miranda made the bottle tree is because she had visions of the bottle tree, right?
Yeah, I was a little bit wondering about that.
So like I can only assume that that is supposed to be true, that they meant us to understand that, and they just didn't say it before,
Yeah.
because how else would he come up with that except that Tabitha told him that
Yeah.
off screen? I can only assume, and that is how we were because I had like I thought, oh, maybe she just remade the bottle trees, but now it seems like what they're saying is that actually she had a vision of the bottle trees and recreated it back in the real world.
Yeah.
It's like the other way
I
around.
that was a big scene. That was a big line to just blow past, and I also, yeah, that struck me. Because that was not my interpretation
Yeah,
from
mine either.
the previous episode when Victor's dad is talking about this. I thought, because he was like, "Oh yeah, we were dropping acid at the
Hmm.
bottle tree, and that's where all this started."
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, so there was a or the, like, presumably,
Oh,
okay.
that's a good
So
point, actually,
so
because that's where they dropped the asses. So the
right.
bottle tree was already there.
Or the way that that line is supposed to read is, we were at that
The tree,
tree and
but
we were
she didn't
dropping
make it a bottle
acid,
tree
and
until
she went
later.
back and made it a bottle tree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because that line flew by like, oh, is this the writers telling us, like, they're trying to steer us away from misinterpreting what they tried to tell us earlier, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So I just don't know. I don't know if Jade is wrong or if the writers are realizing that they were a little bit loosey goosey earlier on.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm kind of pausing on my conclusion on
I
that.
feel like since Jade has had multiple scenes with Tabitha at this point, since she's been back, like I'm inclined to believe that what he's saying is what we're supposed to believe actually happened.
Yeah, I mean that may well be true, but has he had any conversations with Victor's dad?
As far as I know, no. But like what Tabitha knows about what happened is from
Yeah, I
Victor's
mean,
dad.
it's the same
So
writers writing all of this stuff, but that's just not what I thought. And so if that is true, then it seems like perhaps creating the bottle tree in Camden might have created this portal or this connection.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it does feel that way, like,
Though, I mean, there was obviously something there already for her to start having the
but
visions.
there's also, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think it created it, but yeah, like a portal, like you said, like it made a some kind open some kind of,
So previously, maybe the connection was to her, but then when she made the bottle tree, she like grounded in that
yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah, maybe so. But there's also this like, it seems like they're going with this like there's like a some kind of weird chosen one thing happening where there are these people who are getting glimpses of this place
Yeah,
back in the real world, and then they are brought to it,
yeah, like an
and
Elgin.
they're supposed to do like a specific thing.
Yeah,
And
so like, did that whole busload full of people end up there because of Elgin?
yeah, for example.
Except that then it's just crazy that, Chrissy's fiance was on the
Yeah, that seems like way too big of a coincidence to just be a coincidence. Or not. I don't know, but yeah. I generally agree. No, I mean, I really don't, I'm not quite ready to go, like, I think Elgin's thing is like um a little bit more questionable because I think like exactly when he had that dream is more vague, and even if he did have it before they arrived there, it was only shortly before they arrived there. So I feel like that's puts it in a different category from like Tabitha having this dream when she's like what, 7 or something. I mean, they show it in the
Yeah.
episode, we actually visualize it, and then whatever 30 years later or something, like, ends up there. I mean, that's crazy. And for Miranda, I don't know exactly how long it was, but it must have taken a while to make all those paintings. There are a lot of paintings down there, and two bottle trees. So I mean, I think it was at least a decent amount of time before, from when she started having the visions, the dropping acid incident, to when she actually ended up in the place.
Yeah.
So, but it seems like, and there was this insinuation. I mean, I think this is something Henry said, that there had been others before,
Yeah.
that this is like a recurring. That's why it just reminds me of the one, like the Matrix or something. Like it feels like it's like in that vein where there's this weird, like, there's these chosen ones, but like so far they've all like failed to accomplish the mission, and like Tabitha's the latest one, and I mean, she hasn't totally failed yet, but like also she hasn't succeeded yet, clearly. So I don't know, like I don't know what to make of it, but it seems like there's something there,
Yeah.
and it's the nature of it is a bit, the way it's portrayed in this episode is a bit different from what I had thought before.
Yeah.
Because like another point I was gonna make, and yeah, I feel like I'm just spoiling the end of the episode now. But another point I was gonna make about is that like we talked about that Miranda, and like they were like doing acid, it's like they're on drugs, and she's like opened up to some weird thing, and that's how like she gets access to the visions of blah blah blah. But Tabitha, I mean, I highly doubt she was doing acid at age 7 when she had these nightmares, right?
Mhm.
So it's not
Yeah.
that, right? It's not necessary to have drugs, right? It can just come to you. And it makes me think it wasn't really about the drugs. It was kind of just a coincidence. I mean, that's how it comes off to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I mean, maybe it made it more vivid and memorable, and maybe that's why like it sort of got into her head more than it did Tabitha, who seemingly just like moved on with her life,
Yeah.
afterwards, that didn't become obsessed with it, etc. But just fundamentally it wasn't like for the visions like necessary to happen like that. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
like that kind of changed my conception of what happened, significant. Like there were multiple, I mean, both of those things were real shifts for me about like what actually happened there, which I do feel like is a major question. And it also connects with Victor's plot and Jasper and like whatever happened there, like those things are linked. I don't know how or why, but there is some link there. And I feel like, I don't know if we're gonna answer it this season. They've been like slow playing that stuff since season one. So I don't know how much to hope for at this point, but I feel like we gotta get something this season to push that along. Whether they're ready to tell us the full answer of the massacre or the full answer of what happened with Miranda specifically and or Eloise, which is still vague, I think. There's
Yeah.
still this sort of like weird avoidance of like what actually happened with like it's like I don't know. It feels like it must be wrapped up. Like they must have a plan based on the way they're treating it. I feel like they must have a plan for that that's like wrapped up in something that they want to wait on. And that's why they're not like
Yeah.
emphasizing that point, even though I think it would make sense to bring it up a little more than they have.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so that might diminish some of my things I want to say later. But
Yeah,
anyway,
that's fine though.
those are some
That's
thoughts
fine.
I had about, yeah, and this scene is sort of like an introduction to that strand of the plot.
Yes.
So
Yes.
anyway, all right, are you going to continue?
Yeah.
Okay. So go over to Henry playing with a toy car in Victor's room as he arrives. Victor tells a story about the toy car while he gets some supplies. Henry wants Victor to show him around, but Victor has, quote, something to do, and eventually elaborates that it's dangerous, so he doesn't want Henry to come along. He finally relents and decides to let Henry just walk with him for a bit. That's all that's gonna happen.
What could possibly go wrong?
I think so like Sarah's not in this episode,
Yeah.
which struck me as a bit odd. I have a specific prediction for Sarah, but I'm going to save it.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel like they wanted to turn this into, they wanted to give Victor and Henry
Yeah.
some time, since obviously they've been separated for. I mean,
Sure.
they make Son and Jim look ridiculous in comparison. Only 3 years. Come on, you could do better. Anyway, um, okay. Do you want to make any
No, this
comments?
is no.
Okay. So then we go to Kenny. He brings in the last supplies from the ambulance to Marielle. He offers to help bring it to the basement, but she says, "Oh, you've done enough. It's fine. I got it. Don't worry about it, Kenny. Oh, Kenny, you're the
Yeah,
best.
yeah.
It's fine." Kenny goes outside and talks to Boyd. Boyd tries to talk to him, presumably about Tianchen. I feel like that was the undercurrent here, but I'm not 100% sure because they don't specify. Anyway, um,
Yeah. Yeah, the scene is weird. I guess I interpreted it as Kenny's hanging out because he wants to see Christy. And um
ah,
Marielle doesn't necessarily
oh, yeah, I
you
didn't really pick up on that undercurrent, but
I
it
don't
does make
know. Yeah,
sense. It does make sense because I thought there was another undercurrent happening, but yeah, no,
I don't know. It's a
I
weird
can see
scene.
that. I can see that.
I feel like I'm usually pretty good at identifying the undercurrents,
But I
but
guess, you know, like what happened, like Boyd was there, and when Kenny comes back, he tries to tell Kenny, but he won't hear it. And he sort of ends up like going off to himself and like accepting it. You know what I mean?
about what's it?
Oh, Tien Chin's dead.
Oh yeah, I know, but right. But I think part of it is like Kenny was barely in the previous episode, but they've just come back from Christy being caught in the bear trap, and Kenny
Yeah.
like helps to rescue her and bring her
Mhm.
back, but then bringing her back to her fiance.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing is like I feel like they don't. play that up. So like the place where Kenny goes in the rest of the episode
It's
is
about Tian
it
Shen.
is. So that's what
Being
made me
mad.
think that
Yeah.
that was the point they were trying to lean into here. I'm
Yeah.
not sure
Kenny's
though.
got a lot going on right now.
I mean, I think they're both valid. It's just that's why I went to that
Yeah,
place.
yeah. I mean, I think they both just sort of go to the fact that he's sort of adrift, and that's
Yeah.
why, the scenes where he leaves his house. The screwdriver scene is weird.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like I get where they're going with that. I'll
yeah,
talk about that when we get there,
yeah.
but okay, so boy tries to talk to him, but he doesn't want to talk about it just now, whatever it is. Anyway, Boyd goes into the infirmary and we see Randall writhing. Christy finds Boyd there and says Randall's doing better. Christy mentions that there was a portable ultrasound on the ambulance and asks Boyd to tell Fatima about it. So
Yeah.
we just might be getting a follow up here. Okay, so the comment I wanted to make here, they don't actually do this in this particular episode, so it might just be me, but I feel like, well, okay. I feel like the writers at least knew that hovering in the background of this scene where Kenny brings in this stuff from the ambulance to Marielle, and she's like, no, I got this, fine. Is like, she's stolen medical supplies from the infirmary before. And
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, so, but like, she didn't do anything suspicious for the rest of the, and including
Right.
here, like, you can read that episode or you can read that moment just as basic as what you were describing, which is it's more about, like um it's more about how like,
Like
Kenny.
he's sticking around too much.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he wants to connect with Chris, but it's kind of awkward, and it's more along that line, But I was just gonna say, like, it just made me think because Marielle is strangely the Charlie of the show. I think the addict or the junkie plot is like hard to it's it's not as bad as the baby plot, but I think it's hard to make it work because, like, I mean, you can do it once, but like it feels to me like there's not much you
Yeah,
could
it
do.
becomes tedious.
Either you go through the withdrawal and then you're off and then it's over, right? And like it feels like that's kind of where we are. They did that. And that's what happened with Charlie too. And then like the only place you can go from, if you want to continue it, if you don't want to come up with something else to be the thing, the only place you go is like a relapse, some kind of like,
Yeah, and
and then
that's
it's
just
like
not that
it gets
interesting.
tedious.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like it just feels like there's no good place to take it. You either end it or it just ends up wearing out its welcome. And so I'm hoping that they have ended it because I did feel like there was a whiff of a possibility there. But then the rest of the episode didn't make it seem like that was the case. Mariel has several scenes in this episode, and like there was no scene where she came off as suspicious, to me at least.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if we're actually supposed to think that there's any risk there or if they were just like letting it hover there for a little bit for the audience, but they knew like they had no intention. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then later we have that scene with Randall, and for a second I was like, "Oh, is he referencing her having had this addiction?"
yeah.
And then I was like, "Oh no, he's talking about the other
I
thing."
thought the same thing, and
It's
it's
just because there's
definitely
just there's
not
more
that.
stuff to talk about. Like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Like that weird trauma bond that they
yeah, the
have,
trauma bond.
like
Yeah,
they all went through this specific weird,
yeah,
crazy thing. And he talks to Julie about it later too.
uh-huh,
And so yeah, I feel like that, yeah, like that's really more the point of those scenes.
uh-huh.
And
It made me think that Julie was gonna also move into the clinic.
oh yeah, yeah. Eh, it's funny I have comments. I
Oh
have
my goodness.
comments, but I'm
Sorry.
gonna wait. So let's see. Do I want to say something else about this scene? I think not. So are you ready to move forward?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have Fatima and Ellis sitting in their room and discussing the situation. Ellis wants to go to Christie. Fatima doesn't. Boyd arrives with some good news. Ellis tries to talk her into it, just going to Chrissy, right? If Boyd is still outside, like they don't know what he's there for yet, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Um Ellis lets Boyd in, and as he says, that's Boyd, what's going on? Like
Yeah, it's
he
clearly an awkward scene that he's walked into.
yeah, he picks up that like there's more here than just like normal business, and like what the fuck is going on. So he's gonna get something, and I will talk about that later.
Yeah, Boyd is
Okay.
father-in-law. It's weird.
Yeah, we're going to return to
Yeah.
this. So I do want to make comments, but it's not specifically relevant to this scene. So anyway, okay. So then we go to Donna throwing rocks into the swimming pool. Tabitha approaches and asks about Dale and Donna, and Donna says more or less what we might expect. Well, he was an asshole, but hey, I mean, he had his moments, I guess. She's building a little rock altar. It wasn't really clear to me until the end of the episode what she was doing. We
Yeah,
thought she was filling the
I was like,
entire
oh my
swimming
god,
pool.
she's gonna fill that whole swimming pool.
It's gonna take a
No,
while. Like, we
luckily
sure?
not. Yeah.
But yeah, the thing she's doing is like way more reasonable. Tabitha mentions being there when he went through the tree. Um, Donna asks Tabitha about the meeting, the diner, like town hall thing. Tabitha feels like she let everyone down. Donna tries to reassure her that it's good she's back and tells her not to try to be a hero. Tabitha hugs her and tries to comfort her about Dale. So yeah, this is another little cue for me from the writers that like there is this chosen one hero narrative going on with Tabitha, and she's out. It's strangely like well, I guess with TV, like maybe it just takes longer, or maybe you repeat some cycles before you get to various stages in that journey. But it's like she's at this turning point again of like, maybe refusing the call or whatever. Like Donna's encouraging her to refuse the call, basically. Like, don't,
Yeah.
but of course she does pursue it later, so it becomes a thing. So anyway, that yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna say about the scene.
Yeah.
Do you have
No, no.
okay. Okay. So then we go to Henry. Henry questions Victor about the Jasper plan as they walk to the tunnel entrance. We're calling them the tunnels because that's just what they call them in the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't call them that if they didn't call them that, but I will because they do. Anyway,
good rule
Victor
of thumb.
yeah. Victor tries to shoo Henry away, but he refuses. And after all this, meaning, the 40-year separation and so on, he wants to stay with Victor. Like, I'm not leaving you again, just like Sun and Jin in the submarine.
Oh
Anyway.
my goodness.
Okay, so that's not what happens here, incidentally. Spoiler alert
Not
also.
yet.
Okay. Victor has some toy soldiers to leave a trail and a flashlight, and they enter. So yeah, this is the reveal about. We talked about it when in the previous episode when the whole thing gets like cut off because Henry's arrival sort of
Yeah.
derails the whole mission. Because when Sarah and Victor are going to Colony House, he was like, "I need something so we don't get lost." And it was
Right.
like, "What is he gonna bring? Just a long rope?" And it's like it makes sense, like just some stuff to leave,
Yeah, leave a trail.
leave a
Crumb
trail,
trail.
that they can follow their way back out.
Mhm.
So it's fairly straightforward. I did think this flashlight was a coffee mug at first. I
It
know that's
looks in
like
a
I
way.
know it's just me,
Like
but
a
like
thermos.
yeah,
No,
he's
I
like
also think
holding
it looks like
it
a
like
thermos.
vertically as well,
Mhm.
and it's cold outside too, snowy, so it made
Yeah.
sense. But then he turned it the other way. I was like, oh, never mind. I
Mhm.
guess it's not. Okay, that's just
Yeah,
me.
I really thought he was gonna be like, but I didn't bring snacks for you.
No peaches, sorry. Yeah, so anyway, obviously we're going to come back to them.
Yes.
Um, okay. So Ellis and Fatima have told Boyd the story of what has been happening with Fatima off screen. We just kind of cut in,
Yeah.
and it's implied that they've told the story.
Yeah.
Boyd mentions finally, that they have an ultrasound machine.
Mm-hmm.
Fatima doesn't want to, but Ellis asks Boyd to give them a second. Boyd leaves the room. Ellis tries to talk Fatima into the ultrasound. She finally relents, admitting that, she's worried about what's gonna happen and she just wants
Yeah.
it to be okay. Okay. So this is where I am a bit frustrated. I get why I get why they don't show us the scene where they explain. But much like with Tabitha when she did this, I'm frustrated by it because I don't know how they characterized it.
Yeah.
And I also, what the other thing that feels like it's hovering in the background, like I'm pretty sure, I'm like 98% sure that Ellis does not know that she was like digging her hands in Nikki's wounds
Yeah.
and licking the blood and stuff, right? But it's because we have this scene earlier where the two of them, like we saw Ellis walk in to the like greenhouse area and basically catch Fatima eating some rotten vegetables. She's like, it's the only thing I can keep down, right? And they have this little moment in the previous episode. Suddenly in this episode they're in their room and it's like they're talking about it again. And I'm like wondering, did Fatima reveal the other part? Like, I don't think she did because I feel like if she did, they would have made a point of it. But it's just weird that we don't see what additional, like, what else would he have found out? They already did that, Is it just a TV thing? And then we have Boyd show up, and then they tell Boyd what happened also off screen. And I'm just wondering, like, so he just knows about the rotten vegetables, right? Like,
Yeah, I think he only knows about the rotten vegetables. I
okay,
think and they're about to tell, well, at the end of the episode, they're about to tell Christy about all of this,
yeah,
and we're probably not going to see that either.
we don't.
But I really
We don't
think
see
that
it
he
either.
has not told anyone about the blood.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's true too. It's just the way they're doing these scenes. It's like
Yeah,
I feel like there's a way that they could have had like a couple lines of dialogue to clarify that that's all they know. Because
yeah,
it's weird to have multiple scenes that imply discussions went on off screen but then never specify
yeah,
when there are multiple levels of knowledge here that they could have.
yeah.
I don't know, but I do tend to agree with you because I feel like if they found out about that and if they did it like this, that just seems ridiculous.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, if we find out later, it's like, oh yeah, and she was eating the blood too. That's weird, isn't it?
It's like,
Anyway,
wow. Yeah, that'll be a next level, I think.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I hope it's not that, but anyway, we'll come back to that
We
later.
will.
Okay, so Randall is awake. Marielle comes over to change his bandages to prevent infection. He resists. She sets him up and starts removing the bandages. We see the big stitches on one side of his face. She says there's no sign of infection. He wants a mirror to see it. She gives him a mirror and gives him some space, and he looks in the mirror.
Yeah. Functional scene.
Pretty
Nothing
functional
to say.
scene. Pretty
Yeah.
functional scene. We're gonna come back to that later, incidentally.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess one thing I'll say about Randall in this episode. Should I say it now? Wow, fuck it. I'm already starting. So one thing I'll say about Randall this episode that surprised me is I really expected like instant Boyd rage, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's like it's like he's more fixated on what happened to him when he was in the trance state with the they come for three thing
Yeah.
than he is with this monster attack. You know what I mean?
I do.
It doesn't come off like he's actually like out for vengeance against Boyd. I don't know. It's
Yeah, I
weird.
agree.
I mean, I can believe that he's not necessarily like happy with Boyd or whatever, but like I really thought it was gonna be like as soon as he's ready to walk, he's gonna go out and like
Yeah,
try to
which is
attack Boyd, and that did not happen.
yeah, that's not very interesting.
It's not very
So I'm
interesting.
glad that that's not, at least for the time being, what we're being subjected
I
to.
agree completely. It's just not what I was expecting. I was
Yeah.
so sure that's where they were going with this,
Yeah.
with all the previously on and the previous episode when he comes in the house and he's like grabbing.
Yeah.
I just thought that's the first thing on his mind, but it's not. It's this
It's
other thing.
yeah.
Anyway, So I just think that's interesting. Okay. So Kenny goes into the kitchen of his former, comma, sort of house. I don't know. I'm a little unclear. Is it just that he's been away? I feel like they haven't really shown where he's been living, or maybe it's just been
Well,
a.
I think he's been living there, but he was off doing he went to get the food
Yeah,
and
but I
it hasn't been
guess
that long since Tian Shen died.
I agree. But I guess my point is just that, we've seen several scenes in that house, and I feel like they haven't really established that he's still living there. And yet he
Yeah.
has been back in town since
I mean,
the
it's his
Tianjin
house.
incident
No, you're
happened.
right. The focus has really been on uh the other family that's living there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it comes off like it's just their house. And of course, this episode is moving us in the direction of that being true.
Yeah.
So this is sort of a transitional scene, but yeah, it was the first time I was like, oh yeah, he was actually living here, and they haven't shown him here, I think, this whole season. So, and yet he's been
Yeah.
back in
And
town.
did Jade move out?
Yeah, well, I feel like Jade's living in the bar
Oh,
now.
that's right.
Basically, like I think that's yeah, he did used to live in that house too, but yeah, I think he's taken up residence in the bar.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, sorry, I just had to make a comment about that. Kenny goes in the kitchen of his house, and look, I say former just because they haven't shown him there.
Soon to be
And
former.
it will be. Yeah, exactly. Looks in some drawers, and then he goes out back and catches Julie blazing it up. Kenny is looking for a screwdriver of his mother's. Julie thinks that it was moved by her dad. Of course, it was Jim.
Did
Insensitive
somebody do
bastard.
something
He
wrong?
had no idea,
It was
but
Jim.
I still blame him because
Hmm.
it's easy. He's just so hateable, Jim. Anyway, um, Julie thinks it was moved by her dad, and then she tries to apologize. Kenny reacts a bit and leaves her to it, and then he goes into the dining room and he looks at the altar,
Yep.
which is still there. And I guess it's been added to. I guess that's another thing that I don't think they showed. Like,
I think they showed that.
did they show it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's another thing that suggests he has been there.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's something Kenny would do and not like the rest of the family living there.
Yeah.
I can imagine them making a memorial, but I can't imagine it being quite like that because that seems like a particular
Yeah,
cultural thing.
they showed that in a previous episode.
Okay. I've just forgotten. Okay. Any other comments here? Okay.
Yeah.
So Victor and Henry are in the tunnels. Victor leaves some toy soldiers to keep track of where they came from. Victor thinks Jasper should be there where they are now. He remembers
Yeah.
Jasper being this
And
particular
he's
place
extremely confident.
in the tunnel. And he also mentions a clock and a wheelchair just to set us
Yep.
up for what we're going to see later.
Yep.
Henry wants to go back. And it's like, damn, Dadsky, like
Why'd you come?
I told you didn't have. I didn't try to make you not come.
I didn't
Like,
want you to come.
if you're just gonna drag me back, like, what are you even doing here? Anyway, so he wants to go back, but Victor wants to go deeper, saying it's important, and so they continue, and of course you will pick that up later.
Yeah, we'll pick that back up.
Okay. Boyd waits for Ellis and Fatima at Colony House. Ellis comes out first. Elgin is inside taking pictures of the Colony House residents with the Polaroid camera.
Stressful.
The very much not scary Polaroid camera. He snaps a picture of Fatima on the staircase as she leaves and mentions that he's going to make a collage with the pictures. She isn't super interested and kind of just walks out. That's not the first thing on her mind for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Like good for you, Elgin. I'm out. Anyway, we catch up with Fatima outside Colony House. Fatima doesn't want to say anything until they have to, meaning to Christy about like her eating the rotten vegetables. I guess again, this is the point where I'm like, I wish you'd be more specific about what you don't want to say anything about. But anyway, I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And Boyd will come along at her request as well, as Boyd is father-in-law, like you said.
Yeah.
that's definitely his main role in this episode.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So yeah, and we'll come back to both of these plots.
Yeah.
All right, but do you
No,
okay.
I will come back to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jade finds the other bottle tree. Ghost Tom appears, wiping a
Ghost to
glass. Jade thinks there is a design to this place, but Ghost Tom thinks that somebody just put the bottles there, giving some Lindeloffian speculation about boring answers for the bottle tree. All of you should know what I mean by that. And if you don't, go watch some David Lindelof shows and you'll see. Anyway, Jade mentions that Miranda had here it is. Here's the thing I was talking about earlier. Jade mentions that Miranda had visions of the trees, right? No one said this before. And so I'm like, I feel like that must have been something they wanted us to be
Yeah,
clear
you're right.
on.
You're right.
Um Ghost Tom mentions Jade's visions. Um I guess the idea is that he's saying like, well, you had visions of stuff, but like that doesn't necessarily
They weren't useful.
yeah, exactly. Like that hasn't really gone anywhere. That hasn't
Yeah.
really meant anything yet. So Jade gets kind of mad and Tom tells Jade to stop being angry and to sober up and then disappears.
Yeah, it's just a really entertaining scene. I love the interactions of those two.
Yeah, it's interesting how they managed to keep it up, even though
I
Tom's been
was
dead for
so
a long ass time
surprised.
at this
Yeah,
point.
it's been a while since we had a scene like this.
Yeah. It's like Boyd has Katri and
Hmm.
Jade has Tom, like to like
Yeah,
talk things out by himself in this weird way.
yeah,
But he also is weird, like at a certain point, like towards the end, right before he disappears, like, you gonna help me with these bottles or what? And I'm like, Jade, what are you doing? Are you serious? Like
yeah. What would have happened if you'd have been like, "Sure, give me a leg up"?
yeah. I'm just
Um,
like, I'm confused. Like, what do you
so
think this is exactly? Like,
this whole scene, I have a few things to say about this, but later when we're doing the
okay,
side by side.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I talked about the revelation earlier. And I think, the idea of like what's inside the bottles is notable as well. I think there wasn't anything in the bottles in the real world, or was there and she didn't look? I'm not really sure.
She didn't
She
look.
just didn't look.
She just looked at the tree and was like,
Okay.
"This isn't right."
Okay. Because yeah, she wasn't. Yeah. Okay. It's so confusing. Who knows what? I wish everyone knew
Well, we
everything.
could go back and
I feel like by now she knows that there's numbers in there, but yeah, back
well,
then
she
I'm not
certainly
sure.
knows in this
Yeah,
episode,
yeah, yeah.
but we could go back to the episode earlier this season and look at that tree. Now that
Yeah.
we've seen this tree.
See if we can tell. But it does sort of make sense to wrap it up in a similar vein to the other stuff. It's just more it's like she painted the things and then she made like a sort of real life sculpture replication, of like one of the things. Like it feels like it makes sense. It's just I don't know. I just never thought that. So it was like it was weird to have Jay just come out with this all of a sudden. Like, oh yeah, you were clear on that, right? Like
Yeah.
no, not really. No one said this, but okay. I really thought it was the other way around. I thought it was that she had the bottle tree and
Yeah.
then she brought it to the world, not that it came from the world and she brought it to the real world.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Same.
and the question of Ghost Tom and who is this, I feel like is still up in the air. He comes across here pretty benevolent. It definitely seems to me like he is encouraging him to think that the bottle tree doesn't mean anything. That is the only suspicious part to me. Because
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that it doesn't mean anything. But his advice to stop being angry and like get sobered seems fairly benevolent to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Seems like good advice.
Yeah,
And he seems to
exactly.
follow it.
Yeah. It takes it to heart. So I don't know. It's an ambiguous scene for Ghost Tom. I'm not 100% clear on what I think about that. So we'll just have to see where that goes, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So are you ready to continue? Okay. So Ethan looks through a book of Tian Shin's. Apparently, Julie went, quote, for a walk.
For a
I think we all
walk.
know what that means.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ethan, is that what the kids are calling it now?
Uh-huh.
Anyway, Ethan wonders about Tian Shin and her husband's marriage. Tabitha, reading between the lines here, apologizes for the fight. Ethan liked it better when they first got there. There was no time to be angry, basically. You talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Ethan asked about Jade at the bar, like, what's he doing at the bar? Tabitha says Jade is trying to figure out a puzzle. But then she hears a noise upstairs. And I think Ethan doesn't hear this noise
Ethan doesn't
from
hear it. Yeah,
context, right?
the way they shoot it, Ethan doesn't hear the
Yeah, Ethan
noise.
doesn't hear the noise. So this is different from the telephone.
Right.
This is really just Tabitha having this vision. So she goes up to investigate, and then the famous Ankui kids make their return for season 3. Oh, how we missed ye.
They're back.
We only saw them in that painting that Miranda made. Like, I don't think we've seen them this entire season.
Oh, how we miss ye.
Except for this scene.
Oh, Ankui.
They did look older to me. I don't know. Is it just me? Did they use the same kids and they're just older because of real world
That's a
reasons?
frightening thought. I did think they looked different,
They look
but
different. And I don't know, maybe I'm reading different as older, I'm not
maybe
sure.
it's just more
They
children.
seemed like larger to me than I remember them being before. But
Huh. I didn't notice that.
it's not necessarily, like I said, it might just be that it's the same kid actors and they've just grown because it's been years at this point since season 2
Yeah.
was filmed. So like yeah, anyway, it might just be that. But anyway, the Ankui kids surround her up the stairs, and she kind of curls up into a ball on the staircase until Ethan comes over, breaking the spell. I loved it. This is the part where I was like, oh man, this show is like taking off. Ethan asks if it was the children, and she says yes. And they go outside. That's where I'm like, oh, this is not a normal show. On a normal show, what's wrong, mom? Oh, nothing. Like that's how that scene normally plays out. But Ethan knows what it is instantly. And she's like, yeah, that's what it was. It was
Yeah.
those fucking Ankui. You know how those Ankui kids are, Ethan, right? Come
Yeah.
on.
Ethan is like so wise this season. This place has broken him and he's like an oracle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It was interesting timing that the mention of Jade and his puzzle uh
Hmm.
manifests them, but it also comes after this thing about like relationships and the trauma that children
Right.
experience with the relationship issues of their parents.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What to make of the timing? But like my general takeaway from this is that we're not done with Ankui kids.
Well, for sure.
Ankui kids. I mean, we shouldn't be because like it's
There's
not
been no
resolved. There
closure.
was no resolution to that plot. It has yet to
Yeah.
resolve, and I'm anxiously awaiting it. And I think resolution to Ankui kids has to tie in with Boy and White in some way
Hmm.
because he was the one that was like leading that sort of thing, or at least like playing a big part in like pushing things along the way.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's got to circle back to that at some point, but it did feel like a notable thing to say, like, yes, Ankui kids are still around and they're still Ankuiing.
They're still on cooing. Yeah.
So in terms of going forward, I don't know if it's even good. It feels like such a big storyline at this point because, I mean, they introduced it last season, so we're coming up on the second season of dealing with that at this point.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if it won't actually even spill over into next season, because it feels like the significance of it is fairly large. And that makes me think that they have to wait more before they tell us everything about it. But I do expect that we'll get some development because it feels like there's a lot of threads that are pointing in that direction, including Jade's thing,
Yeah.
who also saw the Ankui kids.
Hmm.
Um, okay. Are you ready for
Yeah.
the next thing? All right. Well, okay, so in the next scene, Donna finishes the rock altar for Dale. Kenny walks up and says, "Everyone deserves dignity." Donna tells Kenny he's been through enough. Kenny asks if he can move into Colony House, thinking the Matthews family should have the house. um, Donna says they always have room for Kenny, and Kenny jokes about the sex parties, and Donna tells him to go back. All right. So I have a couple of comments about the scene.
Yeah.
So my first comment about this scene, which I think you alluded to, which is just in terms of the sex parties, like I do feel like they have sort of like dialed back on that
Yeah.
particular aspect of Colony House. Like we haven't really seen that for a long
Yeah.
time at
Yeah.
this point. That whole, and even the idea of like we share everything and like all that stuff like feels like it's not, I don't know. It just feels like they don't really want to do that anymore. And then the second thing that bothers me more is that when back in season one, when the Matthews family arrives there, and also Jade and that other guy who's with Jade,
Aw,
who Sarah
R.I.P.
kills, Toby maybe. um
That seems right.
um there's this like ritual they do where
Yep.
you go there and
Yep.
you're
They don't do
supposed to
that anymore.
choose like
Hmm.
town or colony house, and you get one chance and you make your decision, and right, and then like Julie chooses colony house and now she's not even in colony
Yeah.
house, and then Kenny's like, can I just move into colony house? And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, why not? And it's like, no, it's like you already
Yeah.
chose town.
Yeah. I totally agree. Part of that is like the writers just moving on. They liked this initial thing that they did, but not enough to stick to it.
Yeah.
But I think it all goes back to this sequence of events that I think is um triggered by that imbecile who's leaving the flowers for the
Oh
monster
yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Like that night,
Yeah.
that massacre, like after that point, everything at Colony House is different.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And that this sex party line in this episode was funny to me because I'd kind of forgotten,
Yeah.
even though I have alluded previously to like, yeah, they totally dropped that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is also kind of sad, but it's not presented in a sad way because there are these previous scenes in this season where they're really sad scenes with Donna talking about, why is this happening?
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
had this magical place and now it's ruined. The sex parties being part of the magic, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I just wish that they had made that a point. I
Yeah.
just wish they had said like ever since that attack, things at Colony House aren't really the same,
Yeah.
we don't really have the same free spirit we used to, and like it's okay, we get by, but I don't know, like they could have written it where they made it work and then it doesn't seem, and the
Yeah, but
line
they
about
played it
like,
for levity.
and like when a Copsta, who isn't even in this episode, arrives, for example, like, like we used to do this ritual where you had to choose,
Yeah.
but like it doesn't seem important anymore because
Yeah,
things are
that would have been a
too.
good place to put it
Yeah,
because I think in this scene it was really intended to you know, break the tension or
yeah. Yeah, 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 exactly. Exactly. It's kind of just a little crack, and it doesn't, yeah, but it just reminded me of all this stuff that they introduced early on. That was like
yeah.
kind of interesting, and that it seems like they abandoned, and I'm okay with that. I just wish they would acknowledge that they
Yeah,
abandoned
all
it.
those tensions are completely gone. I mean, there were those scenes earlier on in the show where following the storm that came when they put the radio tower on top of Colony House and they had to pool all of their
Mhm.
food, these tensions between, Colony House and town having to share
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
their
Right.
resources. And you know it's been a little while since we had a scene about that because we've had these other issues unfolding.
Yeah,
Now it just feels like, yeah, it's more one community
yeah.
without these like aspersions cast between the two.
Colony House is just a place where they have more rooms, but it's not like fundamentally separate
Right.
from the rest of them.
Right.
So you can just fluidly go
Right.
between and it's fine. So yeah, Kenny's gonna be out there now, and I think that could lead to things for sure. But yeah, like the colony house culture, yeah, is just not the same. Which is fine. But it really stood out when they had Kenny make this
Yeah,
comment.
yeah. He'll just be there to see Tilly do freaky shit.
Oh God, fucking silly. Yeah, she didn't really do anything in this episode, so
No.
she gets a bye this week.
She's
We'll see.
storing it up.
Storing it up, yeah. Fair enough. Okay, so you ready to move on? Okay, so we go over to Jade. Jade is puzzling it out when Tabitha and Ethan walk into the bar. Ethan wants to help with the puzzles. Jade mentions the second bottle tree, and he says that the numbers are the same. So I guess the implication from this is that in that scene with Tom, like he did take all the bottles down
Yeah.
and took out the numbers
Even without the help of dead
and
Tom.
kept track of them. Yeah, all by
Yeah,
himself.
I find okay, sorry, go ahead.
The numbers are the same with different placement, and one is in cursive, and some of them repeat. Jade is trying to figure it out, and he asks Ethan to help, and he agrees. So
Yeah,
we'll come back to this
there's
in a minute.
yeah, we'll come back to this. So maybe I'll wait until we
You want to
get
wait
to
until we
this.
come back? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, something I want to say about this? I think not. Okay. So Marielle asks, or no, Marielle tells Randall what to do with the what do I do with these bandages? You help me out, Randall. All right, anyway, tells Randall what to do with the bandages slash wounds. Randall surleys his way through it, but then asks about the come for three hypnotic state they were in. I can't quite figure out how to refer to that, but anyway,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Mariel tries to wave it away. Randall says, "What if it's not over?" And then segues to saying how bad it is on the bus. And Mariel offers to let him stay there. They have room, and Randall agrees. So it's interesting. We have like, this Jade scene is in between. We have almost two scenes here of like, can I like live somewhere else?
Yeah, you're
You
right. This
know,
episode's all about people asking to live somewhere else.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like it's like Randall, you no one said you have to live on the bus. Like I don't
Yeah,
understand. It's weird that it's like
yeah. Randall is like this character who is, well, I'm not a psychologist, but is like an asshole to people, pushes them away, but really wants to be accepted, but
yeah,
is
yeah,
so like
definitely.
bristly.
Yeah.
And
A little
yeah,
bit Sawyer in that way.
yeah, Sawyer, just surly guy. And here he's able to connect with Marielle and then later with Julie because of being in this having this shared experience of being in this absolutely terrifying suspended state about which we still know very little as the viewers.
Yeah, and it
Um,
was tantalizing to me when he's like, "What if it's not over?" I'm
what if
like,
it's not
"Oh,
over?
is that actually a possibility?" Because like I just assumed that, and it might still be that it's just sort of a PTSD thing that he's been seeing the locusts and stuff. But
Yeah, I don't know what if it's not over could possibly mean, but I do think I mean, I can think of a few things it might mean, but I am intrigued by that line.
I also think like it's possible. I'm just gonna throw it out there just in case, while we're getting our crackpots on the table, I think this is a minor crackpot. Since we have this thing with Elgin, which we'll talk about soon, Kimono Lady and all that, and that was introduced in that context. Like there was a music box thing, that was a dream. Obviously, he wasn't, he didn't experience the full like
Yikes.
trance thing that he wasn't part of Comfort 3. But it just makes me think like maybe they are gonna tie that in and say like yes, that was related and it isn't over, it's just moved into a different stage. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there because we do get more on that later in the episode. And I thought that the way they were pivoting was it's not related, but since he says what if it's not over, it makes me think well maybe it is related, it's just not over. I don't know for sure, but I feel like I should at least say that,
This
so
is a
that if I'm
scary
right, I can
thought.
say I said
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Watch that space.
Watch that space. Okay. So you ready for the next scene? Okay. Henry and Victor go deeper into the caves. Victor leaves the soldiers as they go. Henry wants to turn around again. All right, Henry. God, you didn't have to come in here. Anyway, Victor wants to keep going. They find a mini cavern, or perhaps mini tunnel, if you prefer, with a table in it. And we also see a stroller, or maybe it's a
Pram.
pram. And like, if you watch a 50s movie, like, that's what the strollers look
I
like.
know.
Anyway, at least I would call them strollers, but blah, blah, blah. A stroller, a clock, the wheelchair, the stuff Victor mentioned, basically.
Yeah.
And Jasper, of course, sitting at the table,
Mhm.
because that's what you do, if you're a sentient ventriloquist dummy.
Yes.
You
Terrifying.
sit at a table. There's also seemingly a monster sleeping in the room. Victor enters
Yeah, the
quietly.
one that's like a milkman.
Yeah. Victor enters quietly and puts Jasper in his bag. One of the monsters stirs, the monster that you just talked about. But then another monster, I think that's who this is.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah, not looking like a monster. So the milkman monster has monster
Yeah,
face.
which when we've seen them in the caves before, they had monster phase.
Yeah.
But this other monster, which I wrote parentheses, I guess, in
Yeah,
normal
60s
form,
lady. Yeah.
um says, Victor, if you keep coming down here, one of these days we'll make you stay. And Henry finds a I'm not sure, do you know what this thing is?
Scarf?
Is
I'm
it a
not
scarf?
sure.
I put cloth because I'm like, I don't know what this thing is,
A
but
piece of clothing, an
it's a
article
piece
of
of
clothing.
clothing, yes. And it was Miranda's. And they run out of there. Because yeah, this monster
Yeah,
just said this like
scary.
vaguely threatening thing.
Yeah, scary.
Is
So,
Victor,
so she knows that he comes into the tunnels.
yeah, yeah.
So they're aware, they're not, he's not sneaking by just because they're presumably supposed to be asleep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I have multiple things to say about this.
Sam,
May I go?
please.
So, okay. So, one thing that's notable to me is that I think we're supposed to assume from what Victor says, they moved this stuff. They took this stuff and they moved it to a different part of
Yeah,
the tunnels, right? And again, there's a tableau here, and I mean a tableau in the most literal sense.
it is a table
There's
load.
a table with stuff on it. Anyway, it's like set up, and the ventriloquist dummy is there, right?
Yeah.
And
So
the
why?
clock.
It ain't tea party.
Exactly.
What are
It's
they
like
doing?
it's like again, it's hinting at something going on with the monsters
Yeah.
because it's like, why would they do this, right? This doesn't serve,
Yeah, like they
this.
still have some kind of residue of a human life,
Yeah, exactly. It feels like it's going
a
along those
culture,
lines.
whatever.
It doesn't connect with attacking people. It's like something they're doing on their own time and for no obvious reason other than like you're saying that it's some weird connection to. So then like the other thing about this is this line, if you keep coming down here, we'll make you stay. It made me think, Oh, could that be a hint about how monsters are created? Like,
Like make you say by turning you into
is that what that
something.
means? Yeah, like it seems like that could mean that they're
It
saying if
could.
you keep coming down here, we'll turn you into a monster and you'll stay here with us, you know? It just feels like I don't know, like that's on the table for sure. I also want to throw in the kid that was in the like cage or something down there who may or may not be connected to the Ankui kids. I'm still unclear on that. I don't know
Yeah.
if they want to abandon that idea, but
They
just
certainly haven't brought it back up in a
they
while.
really haven't. And just because that kid was seemingly like kept there by
Mhm.
force, it just seemed
Mhm.
like it was at least relevant potentially to what they might mean by this.
That's interesting.
I just had to throw it out there. You know, especially because Victor's been there since he was a kid. And in a way he is like an adult child, you know. That like, you know, maybe there is like some weird thing there.
Yeah.
I don't know what. And yeah, I mean it's possible that they just kind of fucked up there and they're trying to like pivot away from what we saw with that particular thing.
Mhm.
I'm not really sure. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But then yeah, this idea that like they take stuff, I don't know, like having this cloth of Miranda's like that's weird too. Like I don't know what to make of that either, or why they're so interested in this ventriloquist dummy. Do they talk to it? You know, like is there a thing there? Did Christopher become a monster? I don't know, you know, I'm really curious like what went down here. Like it's weird. I don't know. Or maybe he found Christopher's body. Maybe that was already addressed. I'm not 100% sure.
Um,
Cuz he did say with the suitcase thing that it was like mementos from the people that died and he didn't have
and there
the
wasn't
thing
something
of
for
Christopher's wasn't
Christopher.
there.
Yeah.
So that makes me think he did find Christopher's body, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
There's so much vagueness about what happened at that point that
Yeah, but
I
I think that maybe I already had that question about whether Christopher was found.
yeah. So I feel like that's up in the air for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird that this normal monster appears, you know, like
Yeah.
it was so weird that I wasn't even sure if it was a monster. I was like, could this just be a vision or a ghost or some weird, you know, for a second I thought like, oh, is this supposed to be Miranda? It doesn't even look like the actual
Wow,
Miranda
that'd
that
be
they showed
wild
before.
if it
But you know,
was.
like I had that thought because it just came out of nowhere and it didn't really fit with anything we've seen down there before. But with the context and the other lines and like sort of the makeup, like I do think it's supposed to be
Yeah,
a
for sure. And
monster.
when they talk to them, they are talking to them in the, the non-monster looking form.
It's true. And she uses name, which is something they always do
Yeah.
because they just like know their names and
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, I think your point is good too that I didn't really think about that it does imply that they're aware of people being down there, even if it sort of comes off like they're in some hibernation state and they don't really know it, you know.
Yeah.
It's like they know it, but they don't
They don't act on
feel
it.
inclined to attack for whatever
Right.
reason, you know. But it's like if you keep coming down here, anyway, I don't know. It's weird. It's tantalizing, and I don't know what to make of it, but those are my thoughts. All right.
Yeah.
So you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So Julie walks out of the house and sees Randall moving out of the bus. Randall explains what he's doing. The topic of the Comfort 3 trance comes up. Julie mentions coping by getting stoned a lot. Randall asks if she has any now, and she holds it up. And this is where we end with the two of them. So I guess we're gonna
They're
pick
they're
up in
gonna
the
go get
next
high.
episode.
Yeah, I do think that the three of them, the two of them and Marielle, are gonna get together and talk about what
Yeah.
happened soon.
It feels like they're building to that and they have been building to that.
Yeah.
So because it's like if they had a couple of lines about it, I'd be like, oh, it's just kind of throwaway stuff to kind of bridge the gap because that just happened and they feel like they need to acknowledge it and blah blah blah. They have had multiple scenes and
Yeah.
several lines referencing it at this point, and so Yeah, I do feel like it's going somewhere, and I agree it makes sense that they would get together and like have some kind of discussion about it. And yeah, I think yeah, and we might get part one of that here with Julian Randall the next episode, because this is it for the two of them in this
Yeah.
episode. So I feel like it's a natural time for that to happen. They'll both be more relaxed, and so like maybe they'll be ready to like bring up some specific things, and maybe that'll lead somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Are you ready for
Yeah.
okay. So then we go to Victor and Henry. They arrive at his hideaway truck, if you remember that from season one, two. I can't quite remember. It was right after Boyd and oh, I guess it was season two because it was after he comes back.
Yeah, it was after they find that woman who's got like the thing through her head and the tree.
Oh yeah, right. From the bus. So it was definitely season two. Yeah. So anyway, hideaway truck. Henry wonders about the cloth of Miranda's. Victor says that they like to take things, meaning the monsters.
Trophies.
He does
Trophy is the word I'm trying to think of
trophies.
the other day.
Oh, that's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says they like to take things, but he doesn't know why, meaning the monsters. Victor mentions that before quote the people came, he would hide in the truck. So like the years when he's
Right.
by
Because
himself,
he was alone.
basically, yeah. Henry gets upset about that idea, basically, for more or less obvious reasons. Um, Victor pulls out Jasper and says that this is where it's like in any other show, this would be like the weirdest scene in the world, but strangely here it makes sense. Victor pulls out Jasper and says that Jasper knows things.
Yikes.
He sets him on a table. Victor mentions that he heard. So this is a reveal here. Victor mentions that he heard Jasper tell Christopher a story about this place once. And now they have to make him tell it again. Henry protests that it's just a toy, and Victor says, "You'll see."
Yikes.
So this was a reveal too, because in the previous scene, it was all silent, like we
Yeah.
don't hear anything that's being said in that scene. So it comes off like they're just having a conversation. But here he sort of clarifies that Jasper was telling quote a story about this place. So anyway, I feel like that's a clue about like whatever the thing Jasper's gonna reveal is.
Yeah, although I think we've also seen that Victor calls everything a story.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, but maybe
But
it actually will be a
yeah,
story this
I
time.
mean, I'm
I don't
intrigued to see it. I, as terrified as I am at the prospect of seeing this ventriloquist dummy speak of its own volition, I do want to know what he might say.
So here's my thought. Like this is the thought I had. I feel like what's gonna like something like this is gonna happen. I feel like Victor's gonna be like Jasper, why don't you talk to me? Blibbity blah. And then he's gonna be like,
Victor's gonna have to speak with him.
I feel like what's gonna happen is he's gonna go to Sarah. And I feel like this is where Sarah's gonna come in.
Oh,
I feel like Sarah's gonna be able to either channel Jasper or she's going to be able to communicate with Jasper
channel chat.
or
Yeah.
her presence will allow Jasper to be activated. I don't know, something. I just feel like that's a natural point for Sarah to enter the story again.
Yeah, I like that theory.
So I'm just gonna throw it out there.
I like that theory because I was just picturing, okay, Victor is gonna have to like speak, and it's gonna turn out that Victor knew the story all along, but just
Mhm.
didn't understand that he knew on that
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
yeah,
feel like that could be
Sarah
true
channel.
anyway. But because I don't think that's invalid. I mean, he forgot he had a sister, so the idea that he
Yeah.
forgot that he heard the story. I mean, he said he heard the story, so I feel like yeah, like he does know it on some level. But yeah,
Yeah,
it
it's
just
just like
seems
trauma
like
suppression.
I was just yeah, exactly. I was just thinking about, because Sarah wasn't in the episode, I was thinking about, again going back to like the kind of rush at the end of season two, like Sarah gets trotted out to go like channel like the thing. It wants blah blah blah. It won't stop until blah blah blah. Like that whole scene, of
Mhm.
like vagueness. Like it just seems like if if you want something to like channel crazy shit Like she's a go-to
He's the
person,
person.
you know.
Yeah.
And it's happened many times on the show. I have another Sarah-related comment to make later, but yeah, that's my prediction for next week. I feel like that's where we're going with this, but I think it's so. I'm suspecting that the story Jasper's going to tell is going to connect to either the massacre that happened when Victor was a kid, the Ankui kids, or both. They might be related because obviously Miranda was tied in with that
Yeah.
and with tied in with both.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's going to connect to some of those things. So that's what I'm expecting. I have no idea what he's going to say, really,
Yeah.
but just based on the context, I feel like that's what it will pertain to.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but
Good theories. I like
that's
them.
yeah. Thank you. Any other
No,
comments for you on?
no. I'm
Okay.
just stunned by your theories.
So thank you.
Mhm.
Hey, I'm a number one stoner.
Oh boy.
Anyway, okay, all you '90s kids, who are all, as old as Victor. Anyway, all right. Fatima prepares for her ultrasound. Christy does it. Marielle, Boyd, and Ellis stand by. Christy looks and seems surprised. Christy says she doesn't see anything. Fatima's not pregnant. Fatima says that's impossible. She wants Christy to keep looking. Christy looks again, pointing to Fatima where the fetus should be, but it's not there. Ellis says they need to tell them, and Christy asks, what? And we cut out at that point.
Yeah.
Again, cutting out of the point of explaining
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
going
yeah, yeah.
on.
So I alluded to this earlier, but I want to know why we were confident she was pregnant in the first place. So she's missing her period, she's nauseous, she took a pregnancy test.
Boom, boom. That's what I was gonna bring up, right? And I feel like it's weird it doesn't come up in this scene because it's like, well, how was my pregnancy test positive
Even if
then?
she lost the baby, I mean, you can be
Well,
pregnant and
yeah, but I just want some lines. It
yeah, give
bothers
me
me.
some lines. Yeah,
It
I
bothers me that they
agree.
don't acknowledge it
Right.
because it's like, oh, you just thought you were pregnant and you were wrong, and it's like, well, I didn't just think I was pregnant. I took a
I took a
test and
pregnancy
it was,
test. Yeah.
like. I had objective evidence that I was
Yeah.
pregnant. So, like, what the fuck happened? And sure, there are answers, but I just think it's bizarre not to acknowledge it here since, like, that's the point of
Yeah,
the
I
scene.
agree. I agree. What I mean, it's like everybody thought I was pregnant. Everybody here thought I was pregnant. So what, like, let's talk through these possibilities.
Yeah. And it's just, they just make it like, oh, well, you were
Yeah,
just wrong.
I
I don't
also
know.
wanted to, this is really in the weeds, but I wanted to look up whether this episode was written by a man because I was like, what about an ectopic pregnancy? But anyway,
I
um
think I think it was co-written.
by somebody with fallopian tubes also.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry, by a
got it.
woman and a
No, I
and,
mean,
and a man. There was a man involved, but yeah. Anyway, there was a woman
because
involved.
it's
It's right.
like, okay, you're an EMT, you're a pediatric nurse. We ain't got a real doctor in this place. But yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, we'll see where it's going.
But I do think in
Because
general,
obviously I'm also not a doctor.
uh, yeah, me either. And I don't know what that means for Fatima. I have some further thoughts later in the episode. Actually, the next scene, but and it's actually notable that the next scene is this. Given that this is the scene that we're talking about here, but I think to me, like, this was a positive development for this storyline because, like, I think if they can get the drama out of this, but avoid the dealing with the baby thing, that is like the best possible scenario.
Yeah.
So I'm I'm kind of glad that they're like, yeah, there ain't no baby. Whatever's wrong with you is not a baby. I think like for the future of the show, this
Yeah.
was a good decision. It also avoids the Yellow Jackets problem of having to deal with a miscarriage and all that. You know what I mean? Like we kind of were able to go around all those problems. So I was actually like really pleased with this scene.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm so glad this is not a thing, and we'll deal with it in a different way going forward.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a problem. I'm not saying there's nothing happening. There's obviously something happening,
Yeah.
but
Unless she's pregnant only at night. or if she's
Yeah.
pregnant when the monsters are active, or if she's pregnant in another dimension.
Yeah.
Like she's pregnant in Camden, Maine.
Yeah. And then your question about the oh my god, that word. Ectopic pregnancy, like, is a valid real world concern? I
But
don't
it's not
know.
a valid in-show
That's what I'm
concern.
thinking. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know if we're
I
actually
know.
supposed to consider that here as like, would they actually say that later?
No,
Like,
no,
I don't
no.
really
I
think
think they
so.
would, they never would. But just to say that, like, I understand that the writers are gonna write whatever they want the story to be. But when Fatima's like, you barely looked, I'm kind of like, yeah, you barely looked.
Yeah. She did look again,
She
for what it's
did.
worth. Um, uh, and it's like, here's where, so I don't know. I feel like they try to make it where it's like, it's not that she looked too fast. Like, there really isn't
I
anything where it's
know.
supposed to be. Okay. Are you ready to
Yeah.
move forward? Okay, well, here we fucking
Yeah, here
go.
we go. Let's hear it.
Elgin is hanging up some Polaroids.
Hmm.
He looks at the one with Fatima on the staircase, and the kimono lady appears beside her in the photograph and then simultaneously behind Elgin. She says, "Help me, Elgin. I can save you. I can save all of you. I can help you go back home." Then Clara comes in and breaks the spell,
Clara.
saying she likes the collage. LOL. She doesn't know what a collage is, apparently. A collage is when you hang up Polaroids on a clothesline, apparently.
Aw.
It's like,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
it's like, do the
Yeah,
writers
but
know
the
what a collage
line.
is? Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't quite finish. Elgin looks at the Fatima photo again, but Kimono Lady is not there anymore.
Yeah. So she was pregnant with the kimono lady spirit. Is that
Okay, so yes, this is where okay, what you just said I never even thought of, and it's totally valid. Um,
I don't know about that.
well, as totally valid as a crockpot theory can get. It's at least based on something from the show. Um, so yeah, long has there been, even before season 3, long has there been speculation that there was a connection between Fatima and this kimono lady. People have been saying this for a long time. I've heard it on many podcasts, and like, I was skeptical this whole time. Now, there's two ways that we can go with this, okay? The first way is the writers are just trolling. They know
Yeah.
that people are thinking this, and they are, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
deliberately using a photo of Fatima to make us think there's a connection when there isn't one. Of course, what Kimono Lady says has nothing to do with Fatima.
Yeah.
So it's not obvious to me that there is a connection. But it
Agreed.
but it is notable that she appears in the photograph. Like, I think that is weird.
Fair enough. But I also think, Elgin has no real connection to Fatima either.
True.
They've barely had any interactions.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I'm not I think it feels like the writer's trolling us.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what I believe, but like, it was the first time that I was like, oh, maybe there is something there. And I started going down that rabbit hole of
Yeah.
like, are people like reading spoilers, and like that's leaking, and like there is a thing, but like we shouldn't have known. Of course, I did see speculation about that before the season even aired, so I feel like that couldn't have come from a spoiler
I think
place.
it's just the cheekbones.
It's just the cheekbones. Yeah, like, I'm not convinced that it really looks like her, except in like the most superficial possible way.
Yeah.
So it's like, like, it's a woman. She has long hair. Like, there really isn't much there.
Yeah.
It's not even the same kind of hair. Like, there's nothing in the face that's similar, really. It's like, there's so little. She did wear a vaguely kimono-ish thing once, but like,
Yeah,
not
but
this
I mean,
one.
she could very well have gotten that kimono from the island.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I'm
they're
sure she
all wearing
did.
the
I mean,
same
that seems most
clothes.
likely. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so I don't really think it means anything. Okay. But this line, right? This is different, right? Because before she said, "Help me." But now she says, I can save you. I can help you go back home. And that's where I'm like, okay, you know what, Kimona lady, I don't trust you anymore.
Yeah.
What are you up to? Because when she said help me, I thought, oh, maybe she is some kind of like trapped spirit or something. You know, she's someone who maybe came there and like got caught in something, sort of like the monsters, but like not as bad. You know, like she needs like something to happen to like release her from this purgatory state she's in or something. That's the kind of road I was going down in the previous episode when she said, help me. But as soon as she's like, I can save you,
Yeah.
I can help you go back home, I'm like, you know what? Now you sound like Thomas on the phone.
You
Now I'm
sound like
like,
Thomas on the phone. You sound like the voices who were talking to Sarah.
more so, I'm
And
sorry,
you
that's
sound
the main
like,
thing I wanted to say.
yeah, and you sound like what Miranda was maybe hearing.
Because the voices specifically said, you know, you got to do this thing so you can go home. And then I'm like, and you know, Sarah and Elgin, you know, I feel like there's already like not a big on-screen connection, but definitely an implied connection in terms of what they've experienced.
Yeah.
Very similar stuff. And this is like pushing in that direction, I feel like, you know, because that is, like you said, like literally what they were saying to Sarah, like, you
Yeah.
have to do this to save them so you can go home. And
Yeah.
anyone promising that, I'm super suspicious of.
Yeah, so now Julie is off hanging out with Randall, but I do still think there's going to be a follow-up where Julie goes back to Elchin and is like, let's try to figure out this kimono lady.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to get that in this episode, which we did not. But
Indeed.
the last episode, I think, paved the way for that.
It did. I agree. I agree. I think they definitely could come back to that. I mean, it could be that the Julie, Marielle, Randall cabal all go because it's like I had this dream when that happened, and they're like, okay, we gotta. I don't know. I feel like it could go
Yeah.
down that road.
Yeah.
It could just be Julie and Elgin. Anyway, I think there's room, but I agree that yeah, there's something coming there.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is. I mean, before when she was holding his head underwater, she seemed threatening.
Yeah.
And then in this season, it's like, oh, maybe we misread that. And now I'm back to like, yeah, I'm not so sure. I feel like she might be some kind of manipulative force here,
Yeah.
trying to influence Elgin to do something. And I don't know what that is yet, but I feel like there's, yeah, I don't know. This is like the weirdest scene with her so far.
It is, yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So is there something else I wanted to say? No, I don't think so. All right, so you ready for
We must be closing in, right?
yeah, the next scene is the last scene. So you ready for the last scene?
Let's do it.
All right. So right. So Jade asks, or sorry, Jade talks about the number patterns with Ethan. Some of the numbers are backwards, apparently. Jade leaves Ethan. He's like, get cracking or whatever. It's like, what? Solve this thing, Ethan. Come on. Come on. Make yourself useful, kid. Anyway, and then he goes to talk to Tabitha. He thinks the kids won't hurt her because they want her help. And I thought it was interesting that that was a follow up from the previous scene because I'm like, really? I don't know about that. That's not clear. I think he might be right, but I also don't think that's a valid bit of reasoning. Anyway, because they can be manipulative and ask for help even when they actually do want some harm. Anyway, Tabitha is Tabitha is basing what she, you know, in terms of the idea that they want her help, she's just basing it on Miranda's vision, and she's not so sure like what's going on with them at this point. And then she notices a drawing of the wards from the cabin area. And at this point, we intermittently start cutting to little girl Tabitha by the wards. And we also see the three red stones. We talked about that earlier in the season. I thought the three red stones were weird. And I thought I thought they were like, it was like blood sacrifice or something. But the way they talk about them here, I'm like, I'm not really sure. I feel like maybe they're just red stone, like they're just supposed to be red stones and some. I mean, maybe there is some ritual involved, but I don't think it's supposed to be blood. I don't know. That's the
Yeah, it looks less like blood in this episode.
yeah, like the way they talk about it, I'm like, okay, I don't think that's what we're supposed to think. Anyway, we see the three redstones. She asked Jade about the redstones, and he wonders how she knew. There's a shot of little Tabby. This is the last shot we get from this, like, I guess, visualization of her dream
Yeah,
from back in the day. I think that's what
that's
we're
my
supposed to think this
interpretation.
is. So there's a shot of little Tabby from above as
Mhm.
she screams, seemingly seeing something. That's where we cut out, which I
Yeah,
think is interesting because I don't know what that is, and I feel like that could be relevant going
yep,
forward, you know?
yep.
Um, and so Tabitha reveals that when she was a little girl, she had the same nightmare over and over. And that means that she saw this place too before she came, just like Miranda. And that is the note that we end the episode on.
Uh,
Have I stunned you into silence?
yeah, sorry, I'm just sitting here agape. Um, I had this crackpot thought. It's not a theory because it's not fully formed, but what if her mom, like Tabitha's mom,
Mhm.
is somehow relevant? The woman,
You
the
mean grandma?
grandma, like the woman in the kimono, I don't know, or just like somehow because she was the one person she called
Yeah, that's true.
when she was out.
That's true.
And if she was
That's
having
true.
these nightmares as a child,
She's probably like the only one who really knows anything significant, you know, like the people in the hospital know she was there, but they didn't even know who she was. So
yeah,
I think they can only go so far with that. So they don't know, for example, that she was connected with a family that disappeared,
right.
right? But her mom knows for sure, right?
So I don't think that detective work goes this deep, but the if Camden police are so obsessed with trying to figure out what happened to the ambulance that they check the Google search history on
Mm.
Victor's dad's computer,
Yeah, yeah.
and then they would
They could figure it out from
find
that.
mm,
Matthew's family disappears and they'll see
yeah.
her there, and yeah, that could happen for sure. It would definitely be wild if they cut to something like that, you know?
Yeah, I don't really buy it. I'm saying it, but I don't really buy it.
Yeah, I don't buy it either,
Um,
but I think it's an interesting idea.
but I just, yeah, something about the when you were reading this scene back, the scene summary back, I was just like, yeah, is there gonna be some connection to her mother because she's having these persistent nightmares as a child
Yeah.
that are set in this other part of this place?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Not the town.
not the town.
Right? Miranda's drawing like the diner and the church and like all that
Right.
stuff, you know, the merry-go-round. But yeah, Tabitha seeing this cabin area, that's
Mm-hmm.
weird. I don't know. I have no idea what that means, really. Um, but yeah, it seems notable for sure. Since otherwise, there's clearly parallels between the two in terms of the kids and going to the tower and the boy in white, and all that stuff was very synced up. But yeah, the visions they both had visions before they came, but they were different, definitely very different. Tabitha's coming when she was very young and as nightmares. Miranda's coming as a drug induced vision when she was a full on adult. So is it relevant? Does it matter? I don't know. Maybe they just wrote it this way for Tabitha so that it could be plausible that she forgot. I don't know. And and also like you don't put the town stuff in her dream because then it's like, why did you remember this before now? Right? As
Right.
soon as she sees the drawing, she's like, "Oh shit!" Right? So it didn't take much to trigger the memory, So like maybe it's just a contrivance, I
I'll tell
guess,
you
is the
one
point I'm
thing,
making.
in that drawing of those wards, I thought one of them looked sort of like the Ankui kid. That when they first show the
Mhm.
drawing, I was like, "Is this supposed to look like the Ankui kid? Like with the eyes?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really think that, but I see what you mean.
Like, is there going to be a connection to that? Because they made it look that way, whereas I didn't think when they showed the actual structure, I
That they
didn't think
looked
it
like
looked that
that.
way.
Yeah, 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 I agree. And they do show the structures here
Yeah.
when they cut to the dream sequence. Like you see another shot of them, and yeah, I think they look less like that the physical version than the drawing does. But maybe they are like either implying a connection or maybe they just fucked up on the art. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know if they really. But of course, Tabitha's story is wrapped up with that, so it would make sense if there was a connection for sure.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, so was Miranda's, and she didn't see that stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
like Jade here. Like I don't know. There's stuff here. I don't know. Something connects to something, right? I don't
It
know.
has to, right?
Don't ask me. Quantum physics. I don't know. Can I just say words and it'll solve it?
Oh boy.
So anyway, that's I don't know.
That's the episode.
Final thoughts? What
Jeez.
do you
I don't
think?
know. Just lots of puzzlement.
Lots of
Puzzled?
puzzlements.
I'm puzzled.
I'm puzzled
I
too.
do think, I mean, the obviously, speaking of puzzles, Ethan is going to crack something significant. You know.
Yeah, I love like put him in a corner and get him working on these
You know what
numbers.
else? I love, I know I've said this before, but Tabitha and Jade, I love that team.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
This scene, it's so lovely. Like as soon as she walks in with Ethan, he can just tell like he needs to say that they can come in.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he
yeah,
has to
yeah,
not turn
yeah.
them away. Like
Yeah.
I think that's lovely. I can't wait for them to now go trekking off to the cabins,
Yeah.
abandoning Ethan.
Go
Um
play somewhere,
he's
Ethan.
pretty autonomous, but I
Keep
think
working on those numbers.
I
We'll be
feel
back.
like, is the Chromonocle somehow gonna come back?
Mm. I don't think the Chromonocle's been mentioned this season.
No, I don't either.
Um,
He's too grown up now.
yeah, yeah. Those
But
2 weeks, he really grew up a lot.
to look, 2 weeks in this place? Yeah.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. I don't think that's totally implausible. But yeah, I do think that's coming. And yeah, I think there's definitely a different world where Jade's like, "Go away, kid. You don't have anything useful to offer me." But he's totally like, "Yeah, come in here, like work on this."
Yeah.
Like why not?
Sort of why not, right? What could it
Yeah,
hurt?
yeah.
I think it's odd that the bottle trees have the same set of numbers.
Mm,
Um
but with different writing, one's in
And
cursive,
some of the
some of the
numbers
numbers are
are backwards, which
backwards.
is maybe like a nod to this mirror universe idea.
And some of the numbers are repeated. So yeah, there's like a few details about it. I don't know what to make of that either. Did two people make like did Miranda make did Victor or
Like
Eloise write the
which
other
one is
ones?
older? I want to know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because well, right. I guess yeah. There's the question of who even put the stuff in the bottles. I think that's unclear. It really could have been anyone at this point. I mean, anyone who was there before they were
Hmm.
there, obviously. Um,
Was one created in response to the other?
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. I mean, but did they really like pull them all out and copy them and then put them all back in? I mean, I guess it's not impossible, but it just seems like a lot of work. And why would you do that? But of
We
course, I
saw
don't know why anyone
you.
does anything here.
You remember
So,
in an earlier season when Tabitha is walking up some stairs, ostensibly
yes.
out of her basement. So
And
she
it turns
sees,
into the lighthouse stairs.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she sees some numbers that
Yeah.
appear to be years there. So do these numbers show up elsewhere?
I think
Um,
1864 appeared in that
it
vision in
yeah,
the novel.
1864 is the one that is just like, well, and it also lines up with these Civil War
It's
soldiers.
it got me that they
Um,
brought it up, but Jay didn't make the connection. You know, I was really expecting him to be like, I saw some Civil War soldiers. That really seems like it. It's like they don't say that. I don't know. I really thought like if it's gonna come up, this is the time.
Yeah.
1864. Interesting. That's a specific year, maybe. Uh, Fairly significant in these here United States. I don't know what to make, but yeah, it's like he doesn't really talk about it. I don't know if it's just again like Eloise and various other things, the boy and white, that they don't mention because they're going to come back to it later and they're not ready to confront it at this point. I don't know, it's always hard to know. And I
Yeah,
remember,
because some of them might be times and some of them might be coordinates.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, the numbers don't all have to mean one thing for sure. There could be a variety of meanings, or yeah, oh god, I really don't even know.
Yeah, yeah. Just a lot of mysteries
And
remaining.
how are they connected to the Ankui kids? That's very unclear. It seems like it's implied that there might be a connection, but I don't know what or why. Yeah, there's just so many dots there that are just dangling dots. So anyway,
Yeah.
I guess that's where we'll leave it.
I guess that's where we'll leave it. Yeah, and we'll see
4 more to
what.
go.
Oh boy.
We are over the
4
halfway
more
point.
episodes. 4 more episodes. Yeah, we'll see. Um yeah. Yeah. I
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Until next time.
Until next time.
Buzz
Buzz,
buzz
buzz, buzz.
buzz.